Welcome back, everyone. My name is Jon Uhler. This is Journey to Healing, live on TECN TV, the leader in Internet TV. We're here every Friday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are in the midst of a series, have been for a while, on the topic of boundaries. We're going to pick up now where we left off last week, so I recommend you go to SurvivorSupport.net under the podcast tab to have the context to be brought up to speed to know what we're going to be talking about now. Because last time we talked about what happens when things transition from what we called a reasonable relationship. There's our knapsacks, and if you were my class, I would ask you, class, what's the goal of counseling? And you would tell me, one knapsack, no more and no less. Okay. So what happens, though, when things get out of kilter? We end up with a relationship or relationships in our lives where people we begin to dump. We've gone through this, and you end up with somebody with all the knapsacks. That, of course, briefly fits our picture. Jesus said, do not take what is special, give it to dogs. This is Matthew chapter 7, verse 6. Or give what is special, give your pearls, your time, effort, energy, and resources to pigs. So we have to be able to discern that. If we don't, then boundaries are going to be crossed. So people are going to take their knapsacks and dump them on us. So we go from a reasonable relationship to one that is lopsided, and we looked at that last time. So they're going to take their knapsacks and put them on you. What happens? That translates into stress. So by the way, if you're stressed, that's the real reason why. So we have to look at your boundaries. That's why every counseling situation ultimately, in one way or another, needs to focus on boundaries. And I think pretty quickly, right? We can talk a lot about different issues in counseling, and if somebody is a survivor, that the damage that we're going to be working with can take a long time. But the issue always in play in any counseling situation ultimately is going to have to do with here and now relationships. So if counseling is effective, it's going to bring things back to an even keel. And if it doesn't, again, you're going to feel stressed. And then, as we talked about Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, trust me, the body does keep the score. So we looked at last time, when things get out of balance, I'll remove my picture just momentarily and we'll go through real fast. Remember, it's a one-up, one-down relationship. On the left, you'll see the descriptors. We call them selfish person, hurtful, emotionally irresponsible, oppressive, dumper, pig, dog, and fool. Again, go back, look at the previous podcast. We go through these a little more quickly. But again, what happens is they take their stuff. What is their stuff? The weights and measures. Okay, you look at how they pile on the weights. Okay. Here's this will be an easier one. Okay, so big things and little things over time will mount up, will make a difference, and eventually you're going to feel the weight of it. And again, how many knapsacks are we called to have? Just one. And so we've looked at the course of dealing with a selfish person. Remember, unfortunately, they go downhill because they're probably, here's a dirty little secret, we think they started at a positive number and just went downhill. There are some cases, but that person will still stop. They will not continue into the pig zone. If a pig is a pig, they probably by the time you're interacting with them, they've been a pig for a while. They just learned how to masquerade. So a pig with lipstick, right? But it's still a pig. So you don't want to go into the fog. We've talked about that before. Another way to view this, and this is a chart that I use with a lot of different clients, including my justice-involved clients in my groups. Remember, thinking in terms of the path. Remember, Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24 says what? Search me, O God, know my heart. Show me my anxious thoughts and my hurtful ways. Lead me in the way everlasting. We're to stay on the path. The two things that will pull us off the path are anxiety and ego. So here's another way. If we had an earthquake and suddenly half of that landscape were to fall away, Okay, so let's say right at the tip of that straight arrow, on the straight and narrow, suddenly there's a landslide and that drops away. What might we see? Well, we'd see a hillside that is exposed. So we have our little guy here with one knapsack. That's the goal, no more and no less. And so what I've done is, in graphic terms, I've tried to, again, differentiate the two issues. Psalm 139 verses 23 and 24, you'll see that up top. For those that have used this chart, for those that are my clients that are tuning in or watching this on video, if I haven't shown you this chart, ask me and I will send it to you, because this is what we'll eventually be covering anyways. Okay, so Psalm 139 verses 23 and 24 says, Lord, search me and know my heart. Why? Because there's something that's pulling me off the path. If I stay on the path, look at that canopy-like effect, by the way. That is Psalm 91:1. It says, he who remains under the shadow of the Almighty will remain stable and fixed. We call that not being knocked off our square. So that little canopy-like effect, this is all invisible, by the way. So this is an analogy, this word picture, but it's very, very real as far as the straight and narrow. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 says what? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. That means don't get off the path. So don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct your, there you go, he'll direct your path. So we get into problems when we get off the path. What will pull us off the path? According to Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24, show me my anxious thoughts and my hurtful ways. If you've been hurtful, what caused that? It's because you have been selfish. And why were you selfish? Because of your ego. So the two things that'll pull us off the path are anxiety and ego, and therefore all of psychology, all the issues that you deal with just shy of a brain injury or an organic issue is what? You can boil all of psychology, all the mental health issues, all these different issues down to two issues, which is wonderful. This 3,000 years old ancient wisdom in the book of Psalms and book of Proverbs, and that should be good news to you, by the way, because then you don't have to worry about which disorder do you have, or there's a bazillion one ways anybody can diagnose somebody. Okay, but it really just comes down to this: you're either primarily fear-based, meaning you're driven by anxiety, or you're driven by your ego. And as I would tell the guys in the institution, that's where I developed this chart, by the way. And time again, the guys in the prison system would say, Mr. Uhler, we've had a lot of curriculum, but this is the only thing that makes sense. Okay, I wish I could take credit for it, but it was simply me just kind of seeing what's finally in the book of Proverbs and Psalms. Okay, and that matches with the colored descending chart that we showed. Okay, and that chart, by the way, the colored chart that I showed you last time, and for sex offenders, I'll add these terms. Now, what I'm going to show you, look at the angry face. Look at the path of ego, by the way, over on the left. It doesn't matter which side. And again, this is just for purposes of helping to differentiate, because at the end of the day, what you end up having is two people that are walking together. But something very different is going on the inside of them. So when you have somebody who is a user or a dumper, remember, those are all the different terms. Think about the scales. So the person here without any knapsacks is a one-up person. He's the dumper, and you have the dumpee. A dumper always has to have a dumpee. So the little guy walking on the path here, if he decides he's going to give himself permission to do it my way. Frank Sinatra's song, I Did It My Way. That song's nice, but think about the words in a way, right? I did it my way. And so that's the theme of a selfish person. So the person with that knapsack says, you know what? Forget it. This is too restrictive. I'm not, as a matter of fact, in the book of Isaiah and Jeremiah also talks about, you know what? People that are off the path, they don't want people to tell them, hey, get back on the straight and narrow. Right? Don't you tell me what to do. Don't you put your values on me, those darn 10 things, thou shalt not kill. You are just so narrow-minded. Don't steal. Gosh, come on, get with the times. So they drop their knapsack. The knapsack, by the way, is their responsibility to do what is right, just, and fair. That's how we treat people. So what they do is they drop their responsibility and hop the fence. They're going to take a shortcut into the realm they think of satisfaction. So again, snowball-like effect grows. But what happens is nobody just drops their knapsack on anybody. So that's where our picture comes in again. I'll grab it. Let me find it. There we go. Okay, nobody just drops their knapsack on the ground. What happens? Somebody has to pick up their responsibility. So every time somebody chooses not to carry their knapsack, what happens? It falls on somebody else. And so we're focusing on the person with the knapsacks. Why is that person we would call that the fog, right? They're going down into the fog. Really, why are they going stair-step like fashion down there? They should be in the positive numbers. Remember, they should be moving upward and onward. A healthy relationship does what? It's two people carrying their own responsibility, no more and no less. See their little knapsacks there? They're moving upward and onward. But where is this one going? This one is taking the person where? Into the fog. See the stair-step-like fashion of the terrace? That's a picture from China. They should be moving out of the fog and incrementally moving one step at a time, iron sharpening iron, and moving out of the fog and expecting the best in someone. But instead, what happens, we hang around someone that is a pig, and so we better be able to discern, and we think we're going on a trip, and they are taking us for a ride. So we do not want to be around the dumpers. Okay? So that's why it's so pertinent to understand and discern who I'm dealing with. So the person who has the dumpor in his life. Okay, so again, we'll go back to this chart, right? If you feel like you have all the responsibility, you're being dumped on. The question is, then why are you remaining that way? Well, this is what love does, folks. This is not a picture of love. Why? Because perfect love casts out all fear. I'll tell you exactly why the person on the left with all the knapsacks has all the knapsacks, because class, how many knapsacks should you have? The answer is, there it is. One knapsack, no more and no less. To the extent that you have anything other than one, you have an issue, and the body keeps the score. You're going to feel it. So if you have more than one knapsack, you have enabled somebody. You have enabled somebody that's morphing into a pig, or possibly a pig. So the person who picks up more than one knapsack is heading to the right on this chart. They're starting to go down the path of anxiety. The person on the opposite side is the person that has no responsibility. What do? They offloaded their responsibility. They are an emotional freeloader. Okay, so if you take these two little people, the person without the knapsack would be going downhill the opposite direction than the slant. Don't worry about the slant. Think about the concept. So again, here's our picture. Look at the knapsacks. So the person without the knapsack is the selfish person. It's the dumper. It's the pig. He's probably, as a matter of fact, you don't know, based upon this picture, did he come out of the mud, wash himself off, so to speak, and meet somebody who was at a 10? Look at 2 Peter chapter 2. They know how to play the game when they're actually all twisted and they're a pig, but they've learned the art of manipulation, and little by little, they're pulling someone down. That is 2 Corinthians chapter 11, by the way. That's a fool, which is the modern day rendering of that ancient term is white-collar psychopath, by the way, or a psychopath. Okay, so the person on the left, no knapsack, is the person on the left in this picture. So if our little guy here drops his knapsack, somebody's going to have to pick it up. It falls on somebody. So that means he doesn't have his knapsack. He has chosen not to do what is right, just, and fair. He's now going to hop the fence of what? He's going to hop the fence of his conscience, and he's starting now to give his conscience, or turn the volume down on his conscience. He's giving permission for his ego to grow, and the further he goes, the bigger his ego gets, and the more his conscience is violated. The person with no knapsack. Okay, let me bring the other picture back again. So the person with no knapsack, look at the negative numbers. So again, for this picture, he's at he's right at the -4 category. So that would put him, we would probably put it right about, see where right, just, and fair? We're going to put that right about in there. Okay. Now, the person with all the knapsacks is the person that has hopped the fence and is now going down what I call the path of anxiety. Now, what is wrong with that? Well, simply violating Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. So there's an enlarged picture of it. So that person is violating, the other person violated their conscience. We talked about the difference between conscience and intuition fairly extensively last time. But again, conscience keeps me on my side of your boundaries. But if I'm not listening to my conscience, that means I'm coming into your restricted airspace. What is left to stop me? It better be you. And your internal radar system, it's two sides of the same coin, heads and tails, conscience and intuition. Intuition is that mechanism that helps you test reality before there's enough evidence to know you've been ripped off. Okay, that's not the time to suddenly come to realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't have been around that person. That's not spiritual. That's poor stewardship, by the way. That's why Jesus said, do not cast your pearls before swine. So in order to fulfill that command, I have to be able to spot a pig. So if I don't, I'm going to end up rewriting Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Like, in what way? Well, if I have a pig in my life, I'm supposed to speak the truth in love. We talked about, again, with our color picture. Let me bring it back here. There we go. What allows this relationship to descend? Well, we could call it first gear, second gear, third gear in the minus numbers. First gear, it's supposed to be speak the truth in love. So the person that's carrying more than one knapsack is not speaking up. Why? For fear of. The next, if that doesn't work, if speaking up, so that's our responsibility. This little person with those three knapsacks has violated three very clear spiritual principles for fear of. So violating Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct your path. The person with more than one knapsack is violating Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. They're not trusting the Lord, because the Lord said, do not cast your pearls before swine. So when someone starts to, and you don't know, if you start to see someone selfish, it doesn't mean we do radical steps. It means that we first, operating with grace, if we start to see a pattern develop, pattern of what? Pattern of selfishness, a pattern of offloading knapsacks, then we need to, in order to help the person grow, but also to protect ourselves, because we're going to give the benefit of the doubt at first, we're going to begin to inquire. So we speak the truth in a reasonable fashion, but that's when someone goes into the -1 category. So we've actually risked opening our mouths. If that doesn't change, then we have to do as iron sharpens iron. Now we're going to have a little bit we're chipping off the rough edges. Now we're going to have to shift into action. And if that doesn't work, now we have to implement negative motivational tools. That's called a spur. So by the time somebody is carrying all these knapsacks, you can tell what they themselves have violated. They haven't spoken the truth in love. They haven't iron sharpened iron. And they are not spurring at all. They are doing what? They've become a yes person. They don't want to rock the boat. So that person, we're going to take our little person with one knapsack. That's the goal. They've now taken matters into their own hands. And if we had a superimposed version of this, as the person is going down from left to right off of the straight and narrow path, they would start to progressively have those knapsacks. So by the time somebody gets to more of the profound kind of psychological or mental health issues, such as anxiety and depression, it's going to be about part way. Really, see the word honest there? So those are the fruits of the Spirit, by the way. If you were to draw a parallel line moving from honest, as a matter of fact, there it is, the word anxious, okay? What level would that be at? We're right about there. That's why the person with those knapsacks, they feel what? They feel, the body keeps the score. They feel anxious. They feel depressed. What typically causes someone to come into counseling? The two primary issues are anxiety and depression. They don't know why they are feeling that way. But in reality, guess what I know? That's exactly right. They have this kind of situation going on in their life somewhere. So my goal is to begin to help them figure out, why are they allowing knapsacks to come in their life? Now, what are some of the indicators that people will notice? We've talked about in the past what's called the ACEs assessment. And that is given at a lot of doctors' offices. We'll give that out, but that's called Adversive Childhood Experiences Assessment. And Kaiser Permanente did an amazingly large study, and they have, it's a questionnaire. You may or may not have seen this, but if you go to a doctor, there you are. The size of the population sample was 17,000, and how powerful this is that depending upon the numbers, okay, and there are a total of 10 questions. I'll read them off for you. That if you have, depending upon how many numbers, so if you have 0, it'll affect your, one way or another, your health is going to be affected. But somebody out of 10 questions, if they score between 1 and 3, they will have a much more an increased likelihood of having some of these issues. As a matter of fact, let me show you the connection. So with the ACEs exam or assessment, it's a self-assessment, here's some of the indicators and then, or some of the outcomes, or what you can expect, and I'll then read the questions. So with an ACEs score of 0, there's a 1 in 16 likelihood that you're going to smoke. 1 to 3, 1 in 9 people smoke, and 4 to 8, you have 1 out of 6 people. Okay, so it goes from 1 out of 16 to 1 out of 6. How about alcohol? 1 out of 69 if somebody doesn't have any, to 1 to 9 if you have 1 to 3. 1 out of 6 if you have 4 to 8. Why? Because these people are chemically numbing themselves out. Heart disease. If you have 4 or more, you have a 1 in 6 chance of having heart disease. And how about attempting suicide? If you don't have any of these, it's 1 in a 96% likelihood versus 20% for 4 to 8. We'll read these off and then we will continue next time. But here are the questions. Did a parent or other adult in your household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you? If you think that's no big deal, then you either dished it out or you lived with that. So that would be 1 point. Did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often? So each sentence starts with that question. So did a parent or an adult in the household often or very often ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Touch you or fondle you, or have you touched their body in a sexual way? Then it even adds attempt or actually have oral, anal, or vaginal intercourse with you. So that's incest as well. No one in your family loved you or thought you were important or significant or special. Your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support you. You didn't have enough to eat. You didn't have enough clothes to wear. No one to protect you. Your parents were too drunk or too high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it. Then there's abuse. Did your mother or stepmother grab or slap you? Did they do a lot of things to you? Did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or used drugs? Was a household member depressed or mentally ill? And did a household member go to prison? Why do I bring that up? Well, first of all, that's the ACEs exam, but those are strong indicators that you have experienced the dumping of knapsacks. We're going to begin to look at additional studies, including my own study that I did 30 years ago, actually about 35 years ago, on the background, the emotional family background, as it were, of those that tend to eat out of emotions. And why is that applicable? Because food is a way of finding comfort, right? We even use the term comfort food. So if you or anyone you know tends to eat out of emotions, does the yo-yo dieting, be back next time, because we're going to look at what are some of those dynamics, because under the surface is what? Are the knapsacks. And we will look at that next time on Journey to Healing.
You've been listening to Journey to Healing, sponsored by SurvivorSupport.net. We trust you've been helped by the information our host, Jon Uhler, has shared. To donate to this ministry, schedule a personal consultation with Jon, or to arrange a professional training for your church or organization with Jon, simply visit our website. On behalf of Survivor Support, we look forward to hearing from you and to have you join us next time on Journey to Healing. You've been listening to Journey to Healing, sponsored by SurvivorSupport.net. We trust you've been helped by the information our host, Jon Uhler, has shared. To donate to this ministry, schedule a personal consultation with Jon, or to arrange a professional training for your church or organization with Jon, simply visit our website. On behalf of Survivor Support, we look forward to hearing from you and to have you join us next time on Journey to Healing.